So welcome everyone to this introduction on how to fill out your online journal. For those of you who are returning CDAs and want a refresher, this is the online journal is what we used to refer to as the OMR, the online monitoring report. All these words mean one thing. This is a place where you gather all your data. I'm sure you've been told why it's important, but really this is the way that we can capture how your schools, not just you, but your entire school is really putting into practice the community schools approach. And so this is a way where you can input all that information and send it to your stakeholders. So typically, once you fill this out, I'll show you how to pull up your report. It creates a nice little PDF with all the numbers, all the data, and then you send it off to your principal, your school board rep, and your PRT rep. So the person who's assigned to you that who's going to look over this and follow up with you on all the different activities, make any suggestions, or most importantly, we love to celebrate all the wonderful things that you're doing along with you. So I'm going to start the screen share and feel free to use the chat if you want to put in questions. I'll pause periodically, see if you have questions, and then at the end, I'll go over the questions in the chat. You'll also be able to unmute yourself if you want to ask questions. And we are going to have another session next week, which is a drop-in Q&A. So as you go through it, please know that you will have questions. It is completely normal, and you could be doing this for 2, 3, 5 years and still come across something where you're like, I'm not quite sure about this. You can ask those questions either next week, or you can contact your PRT rep. You can contact me. We're all here to help you. So without further ado, I'll bring us straight in to the online journal. So can everybody see the screen clearly? Thumbs up, yeah? Okay, great. So essentially, when you log into your online journal, the link was in the email. I'll drop it in the chat a little bit later. For now, you can just follow along on the screen. You have a username and a password. This is unique to each and every one of you. I'm going to be using a demo account for today. It's demo user 1, or as we like to call it, demouser 1. Let me pull up my password here. If ever you forget your username and password, there is a handy button here where you can request it again. Okay, so once you log in, the most important thing that you want to look at is make sure you're in the right school year. For those of you who have a brand new CLC, your school is embarking on this journey, you probably won't have the previous years. For the rest of you, you will have data either from a previous CDA and from previous years. And I'll show you a little bit later how you can use that if that's the case. So the first thing that you want to do is put in your priority goals. Now, these are things that are found, they've already been created and they're on your action plan. So you can just refer to your action plan and copy over your goals for the year. Now, you want them obviously to reflect that action plan, because these two documents at the end of the school year are going to be reconciled together, and you're going to use the data from here to inform and complete your action plan when you do your review at the end of the year. So if you have, let's look over here at the previous year's goals. So there was support for transitions, school readiness. This is called different things in different schools. I know that this is going to be a priority for me. If I'm a CDA, this is a priority for me for this school year. So I'm going to copy that into the following year. As I said, if you're a brand new CLC, you can put in your goals. If your goals haven't been identified yet, you can leave this part blank for now and reach out to your PRT rep who will help you fill this out. So perhaps one of your goals is around healthy nutrition. So students have access to healthy snacks. And maybe one of your goals are to increase students' community engagement and provide extracurricular activities. So as you can see here, I've left this example, health and well-being. This is a very general term. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that looking at your action plan, you're not selecting this like broad, vague goal, but you want to put in the goal that you're actively working towards this school year. So what happens here is that you're going to fill them in. Once you've got them complete to where you want them to be, you'll click on save, because if you don't, what happens is that your data will be erased. So some of you, I think all of you are old enough to remember when you first started using word processing, Microsoft Word, and you would work on something for a really long time, and then something would happen, it would close, and you hadn't saved your work. So this save button down here will be your best friend. There's a save button down here. When we get into the activities section, there will be another save button. You'll want to use that frequently to avoid kind of losing your data. So let's add here, school readiness and preschool transitions. And what was the other one? Oh, yes. Students have access to healthy snacks. Okay, so I'm going to hit the save button here. Now, the next question is, has your CLC school organized its own partnership table? So your own partnership table means that you are the coordinator and the leader of this table. So this is where you have organized meetings with external partners. So this doesn't mean the meetings that you have one-on-one with your partners, but rather it's the meetings that you're going to have with multiple stakeholders. And stakeholders, as we know, are those, could be organizations, individuals who are coming together to work on similar goals. So in the past, many CLCs have organized their own partnership tables, but perhaps you live in a region or in a city where there are partnership tables that already exist. So you answer this accordingly. If you are part of another partnership table, there's a place down here, we'll get to that in a minute, where you'll fill in that information. So if you don't organize your own partnership table, then it's no. This next question is perhaps the most important question in your online journal. How many organizations do you have a signed partnership agreement with? So a document, it could be an official agreement, it could be a memorandum of understanding. If you're not quite sure what that is, we do have examples on the website. One of the things that you want to do when you are working with certain partners, your key partners, the ones that you regularly work with, that you often collaborate with either on grants or programming activities, you want to see if in the past there has been an agreement signed between the school and the organization, or maybe your school board has one signed, depending on if the organization is like really local or if it's for the whole school board. So this is a good point to pause and ask those questions with your administrators, the principal or principals that you work with, and with your school board rep. If you don't have any signed partnership agreements, or if you have some from the past, see if they're up for renewal. And it's a good exercise to talk with your partners about the different goals and outcomes that you have, and then see if you can put that down on paper. How will each one of you contribute to achieving those goals and to help contribute to each other's goals? The next most important question, I'll try not to say that too much, but the next most important question is here. How many individual organizations or service providers are actively working to support activities at your school or schools this year? Now, this is a number that you will need to calculate manually. We'll look at this, we'll come back to it at the end, and we'll return to this. But once you've filled out your entire report, you come back to this section, and after you've counted every single service provider, organization that you have worked with this year. This is where you input that data. So every time you add another activity or you add another partnership, you'll want to recalculate that number and fill it in. Why I say this is the most, or one of the most important questions, is because this is at the heart of the CLCs. This is what we use at the provincial level to make our statements that having a community development agent, have people like you working in schools, is beneficial because they bring these partnerships to support the outcomes of the school and the school board and the Ministry of Education. So for us to do our advocacy work and for you to do your advocacy work, this is the number that you need to keep an eye on, okay? The next one is simply asking if a CLC report is made to the governing board at least 3 times a year. What this means is, it could be a summary report of this. It could be your principal who brings this to the governing board. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to physically present this, but that there's an overview of the activities to date. So we request that you submit this 3 times a year. And so at each point when you've created and compiled this information, is there a report of the relevant information that's made to your governing board? Yeah, question?
Yes, I just wanted to ask if I attend governing board every time there is a meeting and I present what is coming up on our activity list, does that count as a summary report, or is it really something written that I send to the governing board?
Oh, if you're there in person and you tell them, what's been done and kind of what's coming up, absolutely that counts.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
You're very welcome. This following question was something that was, it's a point of information, particularly for your school board reps. Do you manage one or more communication channels on behalf of the school? So this could be a Facebook group, a Twitter account, any other mode of communication. So are you in charge of communications around the CLCs, the initiative for the school? And that's a simple yes or no answer. The next really important section is the partnership tables. So this partnership tables are places where there, again, it's more than one person or organization that you are meeting with. So this is where, when we say table, it's round table, think bringing together all of the different partners around a similar goal. So in many either cities, towns, villages, MRCs, there exist existing partnership tables, and oftentimes there will be one or more representatives from the different schools. Oftentimes the French schools are at the tables. You want to make sure that the English schools are also represented. So it could be you who's attending these tables. It could be a partner of yours. I'm sure you'll hear more about this if you haven't already, ways to get invited. So when you attend a partnership table, you want to include it in your report because this is an important piece of information. So say, for example, it's a table jeunesse, 12, 17 ans. So you'll put in the name of the partnership table. It could be Rap Côte Nord. It could be any one of these tables. It could be Petite Enfance, all of the different ones. So you'll put in one at a time. Then we ask the number of organizations represented, excluding yourself, excluding the CLC schools. So, this particular table had 6 organizations sitting around. So there was a representative from each one of those organizations and or schools and or institutions that were around the table. And the number of meetings per year. So obviously you can go and change this, at the end of the year. If you've had additional meetings, typically they'll meet 3 to 4 times a year. This little button asks you to select an area of focus. So there are some tables that kind of do a little bit of everything. We're going to challenge you to kind of focus in on exactly, maybe one or two, at the most three areas of focus. Pick the ones that the table is kind of focusing on this year. So for the table jeunesse, again, this is one of those tables that kind of did a lot of things, but in one particular year, they were looking at student perseverance and success, and they were looking at health and social services. They did a bit of the other things too, but those were the main focuses. And I'll click that save button. If you're on more than one of these tables, you of course insert a new row and you do that process again. When you're done with this page, doesn't hurt to click save one more time, and we get to move on to the next section. So we just filled this one out, goals and partnerships. Now we're going to look at the activities. So this is going to be the bulk of the data input that you focus on for your report. So this is where all of the different activities that you do come into this report. Now, as a reminder, in general, the activities you're putting in here are twofold. So number one, it's all of the activities that include a partner, because of course, those are the ones that you want to prioritize. In some cases, we know that there aren't always partners available, but rather the activity itself had a significant number of volunteers coming into the school and helping out. So in that case, you like that is something that you want to include. Sometimes we get either donations or things that haven't really turned into or been linked to an activity yet. So those are not necessarily things you'll put in here. Once again, this is not a reflection of your work as a CDA. This is a reflection of the school adhering and practicing the community schools approach. So it could be something that's happening in your school that you yourself was not directly involved with, but that, some point in the past was something that the CLC helped initiate, the CLC built a partnership, and now there's a staff member who takes it on. So a good exercise is, you start with the information that you have, the things that you're directly involved with. And then as you progress and you build your relationship with staff and you build your relationship with administration, principal, and others in the school, you get to learn all the different activities that are happening. And those are things that you can include in your report. So say, for example, you're coming into a CLC that existed in the past. So there was somebody else, there were activities being done. You have an advantage. If we go back to this school year again, this little drop-down menu, and we select the previous year, we'll be able to see the activities. Now, mind you, this is a demo account, so there's just one activity here that was created. So I know that, I came into the CLC school. They had a whole bunch of activities for preschool and transition and helping families when they start school. So last year they did this activity. This year I inherited the CLC. The staff wants to do this activity again. I organized it. Wonderful. I did the activity. You can go in the previous year and what we call clone that activity. So it was the same activity. It's done year after year after year. I can take that information and input it into this year. So the way to do that, those of you who are new, just don't listen to this part. So the way that you want to do that is you select the activity. So I'm in the previous year. I'm going to select this activity because it happened again this year. And you have this very handy button called a clone button. And if I press that, I get a message that I've cloned the activity. And the title is the same title with this cloned in front. Now, the first thing you want to do is select your new dates. As you can probably tell, the date determines where this ends up on your report. So if I did this on November 1st, or November, say I did it yesterday, on November 9th. I'm going to find November 9th, 2022. That was the beginning date, and it was a one-day event. So clear that and select the same date. Now I know that it's going to show up in the right place. So it'll show up in this year's report. The next thing I'm going to do, just for, clarity of your report, I'm going to remove this section that says cloned. Okay. And then I can go into the rest and fill out the rest of that information, update the information. I'm not going to do that right now. You'll see that information as we go through a brand new one. So I'm going to save this. And now when I go to this current school year, I already have an activity for this school year. So the hard part was done. Then I can go and update it. Now, say you want to input a new one. There's this button over here, Save and Clear Form. So this gives me a brand new form. So I'm a new CLC, I'm a new CDA. I want to input the activities that I've done so far. So one of the initiatives, let's say one of my initiatives was to, in order to provide healthy snacks to students, I learned from another CDA in a previous year. Well, they did this thing and they had a snack fridge. And so I worked with my partners, I got some donations, and I created this thing called the snack fridge. So that's what I'm going to call this. I'm going to call this my snack fridge. And this started, let's say in October. It's an ongoing project. So I won't put an end date so far. What you can do, if you want, you can always update these as you go. We can always put today's date. The location of the activity. So if it was done in my school, if you have more than one school, you can select the school or multiple schools. If it was in another school that's not a CLC school, or if it was done in a community venue, you can either select your school or input the name of the place where the activity was held. In this case, the snack fridge is in the school. And we ask for a short description. And we mean short. So think about this as your news headline. What is it that you want the principals and the school board reps to know about this activity? They won't know all of it. This isn't the place to write the entire kind of impact story of what happened. This is where you want to put in the, we say only the first 200 characters will display. You don't want your report to be excessively long either. So think about what is most impactful. Mini fridge with fresh snacks available to students. I mean, I think that's fine. Is there anything else that I want to add? Thanks to a donation from an alumni and a food grant. Yeah, I think that'll grab some attention. Like, okay, you're talking about alumni, you're talking about donations, you're talking about a food grant, and this also speaks directly to the goal that we talked about, where students have access to healthy snacks. Okay, good. Don't need to put anything more than that. Is the activity a webinar? Not this one. Thankfully, the food is real. The frequency of the activity? This happens all the time. Let's say weekly. Well, we restock the fridge a couple of times a week, so two to three times a week. Wonderful. And the lovely save button before moving forward. The outcome areas. So again, here we challenge you to pick one or two. If you need to go to a three, but really pick two. Select up to two. Sorry. Up to two associated outcome areas. Why we're asking you to do this, we know that everything is interconnected. Healthy snacks lead to students who are ready to learn, leads to, better outcomes. We want to bring it back down to the basics. What is the direct link to the activity and these outcome areas? So it is health and well-being. And that's pretty much it. And that's fine. You do not need to select more than that. You want to be very discerning with the things, the check marks that you put, because this is going to give you really good data. And it's going to be really pointed and focused. So I've done this section. I'm going to click on save. Next, I go into the participants. So there's a difference between participants and volunteers. And I'm going to open this parenthesis here because it's really important to distinguish between the two, especially when we get to the adults who are either participating or volunteering. So a participant is someone who is, enjoying the activity. They take part in the activity. In this case, they're the ones that are grabbing the snacks. They're using the fridge. A volunteer is someone who is giving of their time without being compensated. So, for example, when you have an activity and staff participates, if they are volunteering and not getting compensated in any way, so sometimes teachers, have a certain amount of hours that they need to contribute towards, helping out or running clubs or things like that, but then they get compensation days at the end of the school year. They are not volunteers. They're participants. So if you need help with clarity on that, you can ask your principal. They're the person or people who are kind of really knowledgeable about that. But I would always caution to err on the side of caution, if you will. And, your volunteers are really just the people who are coming and giving of their time without any compensation. So in this case, we have the number of participants. Well, every student from grades 3 and up can access this because that's the fridges in that wing of the school, and there are about 150 students. Now, do they all use this snack fridge? Not necessarily. Again, I want to err on the side of caution. I've spoken to some teachers. I've kind of counted and taken a look at the amount of food that goes in and out of the fridge. So I want to roughly estimate that there's about 80 students who are participating. I know there are some teachers that go and take the snacks because I've invited them to go and take snacks, because why not? Why not have students and teachers and all staff members accessing healthy foods? So I know there are 3 that have taken me up on my offer, so I'll put that in. For support staff, I know that there's 2. There are no parents who are currently using that fridge, so I'm going to put a 0. And so if there aren't any, what I would tell you is put in a 0, because you see these little numbers over here. They ask you to fill these in. CLC partners that are actively taking food from the fridge, no. Children 0 to 5 taking food from the fridge, no. Seniors, not for this one. Other community members, no. So I have all of my participants here. Now, if this was something, certain activities happen more than once or happen in multiple sessions. Let me save this. Say, for example, I did a special event one day and I didn't have snacks, but I had pre-cooked food for anyone who would like to take some home. And I want to calculate that separately. Here it says, click here to add a column for a new session. I can add that and I can track that separately. Another time this would come in handy is if you're doing, say, after school sports activity with a community partner. So the YMCA is coming in and they're offering sessions for different students multiple times in the school year. This is where you can add a session for each one and track the number of participants for each one. Okay. Save that. And I'm going to delete this right now because I want my numbers. I like to get my little check marks. So once you've completed a section properly, you'll get a little green check mark here. For the volunteers, if you did not have any volunteers for the activity, you click on I didn't have any volunteers for this activity, and you get your check mark and you move on to the next section. However, if you did have volunteers, same thing. Participants and volunteers, when you have multiple sessions, you can add columns for different sessions. So once again, your volunteers, the reason I made that little parentheses before is because we do ask you for each one was there any youth or students outside of the school day who volunteered for something? Say, for example, for my fridge, we'll get to the partners later, but I have, 3 students that come with me at lunchtime to go pick up the food from the local grocery store. They don't get any compensation for this. They are volunteering their time. So I would add them. There's 3 students who come with me to go and pick up the food. Are there any parents? Maybe I have a parent who goes and picks up the food, or maybe there's a parent who drives the students to go pick up the food. So you want to make sure that you include them because, again, they're not getting compensated for this. They're volunteering their time. Any staff outside of school hours and any, as we said, required extracurricular activity duties. So in this case, there weren't any. Any adult community members that are volunteering their time who are not parents. So it could be an aunt, an uncle, a grandparent, a neighbor, or something. In this case, there was just that one parent. And any seniors. So if your volunteer falls into more than one category, select one and input them on one category, please. We don't want to double report on things. Then I click on save. I have my green check mark. I move on to the partners. So the partners is, again, one of the very important places where you want to make sure you have your information. So as I said, the partnerships are at the core and at the heart of the community schools approach. The whole raison d'etre of the CLCs is to mobilize partners in support of student success. And of course, the second mandate is to mobilize the school to support community vitality. But in this case, we're looking at how did the service providers, so it could be people that you've paid for the services, or it could be partners who are doing this as part of their mandate. You want to include everybody in this list. Now, if somebody kind of like just donated some money, if it was like an individual who donated money, there's a section for that a little bit later. Here you're looking at, primarily organizations, companies, things like that. If you find yourself clicking, I didn't have any partners for this activity, you need to pause here and ask yourself if it belongs in the report. As I mentioned at the beginning, if you had a significant number of volunteers and for some reason, you had a partner lined up, it didn't work out, something happened, they couldn't come, you got some volunteers instead, it could make its way into the report. But I would caution you to really think twice and 3 times before including an activity that did not have any partners. Because, as I said, this is not a reflection of your personal work, it's a reflection of how the school as a whole is engaging partners in support of student success. So I'm going to uncheck that. And then, above the little box, you have click here to add a partner. You can add as many partners as you had. So in this case, my main partner for this mythical fridge, free fridge snack activity was Maxi. Maxi was wonderful. They helped to develop the activity or program. Not really. They didn't kind of help me create it or develop it, but they did help to deliver by providing the food. And this is where you can put the value of any material resources donated. Now, mind you, this is not if they've given you money. This is all the physical material that you need to assign a value to. So I know that, Maxi donates about $100 worth of healthy snacks. So I'm going to put $100. If you're looking at this over, multiple weeks, or you look at it from the time of the beginning of the activity until now, and you input that information. Just save that. My other partner is actually a local electronics store. So I'm going to make up a name. Électroménager Super Aubaine. So this this store actually gave me a discount on the mini fridge. And so they, I mean, we're stretching it a little here, but in order to be able to click one of these, they didn't develop this project, this activity, this programming, but they're helping to deliver it by providing a discount. So their discount was about $300. So I'm putting that they contributed the value of $300. So I'm going to save that. So these are my partners for this activity. I'm ready to move on to the next thing. Before I save and clear the form, I'm going to go back and see, do I have my check marks everywhere? No. The outcome areas, computers, technology. They want me to select the second one. Fine, we'll select the second one. So academic success, student engagement at school, support for transition, sense of belonging, student involvement. Well, support for teachers. Not exactly. If we're looking at health and well-being, sense of belonging to the school, sense of belonging to the community, what would you say? Here's my question for you. What would you say could be the second outcome area? So we're looking at the snack fridge that's available to students. What could an outcome area be other than health and well-being? Is there one? Thumbs up if you think there's a second one, thumbs down if you think there's no other. Okay, so Megan, you want to give me your idea?
Sure. Maybe community involvement in the school as its alumni and I think it was community members donating the food.
Wonderful. That's perfect. Okay, that's great. That gives us our check mark. And who would have thought, you see, this is the wonderful exercise. You're talking about providing healthy snacks to students, but really it gave the community an opportunity to get involved in the school. I love that perspective. Wonderful. Okay, so that activity is done. I'm going to save and clear the form. So you do this for each one of your activities. Obviously, I gave you that one example. Now we'll look at something, that activity I cloned before, and we're going to go through this way faster. Because this is the one that we're just updating the information. So I cloned this activity from last year. I changed the dates. That's the only thing I did. So now what I want to do is I want to go in and make sure that the rest of the information is up to date. So this was a great activity. It was a workshop for parents on healthy bedtime routines. That's all I need to say about this one. If there was anything in particular, I would add it here, but really it's pretty straightforward. It was not a webinar. It was a one-time activity. Okay. The outcome areas. So it was, let's see. So preschool is one of those things. If it falls under the 0 to 5, preschool is like 4-year-old kindergarten, 5-year-old kindergarten. So you have children aged 3 to 5. So we talk about early childhood education and we talk about development of parenting skills. Now, I want to think about this because it is early childhood education, but is it really? I'm talking to parents about healthy bedtime routines and I'm bringing them into the school. So maybe I don't want that one. Maybe instead I want health and well-being because we're talking about a healthy bedtime that's good for the mind, it's good for the body. It's also really good for the parents. So depending on your rationale, so every activity, as we know, starts with the rationale. Why am I doing this? And you select which ones you're going for. Perhaps it isn't even about parenting, but really all you wanted to do was get the parents in school. So parental engagement in the school. So this is, I'm running through this kind of thought process out loud to model the fact that this is a normal process that you do when it comes to the outcome areas. Always bring them back to your goals and outcome areas and ask yourself that reflection. If you hadn't done that reflection before starting the activity, this is a good time to do it. So we'll save that. Now the participants, so this is data from the previous year. I want to input it with the data from this year. This fictional school that the D-Mouser school that I work for is, they opened up like 3 more classrooms and we had almost all the parents and the students and everybody come in. So we have about 35 students. We had a whopping 25 show up, which was amazing. 2 teachers were involved last year. This year we had 4 teachers involved, and each class has a support staff, and they all came to the workshop, which was wonderful. The parents, so we had about 30 parents. Some came with their conjoint, some came alone, some came with a grandparent. So by parents, we mean parents, guardians. CLC partners, we had one CLC partner that came who was not presenting. So somebody else, we invited one of the partners because they wanted to see what we were doing. They were really excited. They were interested. So they came in as a participant. And we had some little ones because some of the families had their little ones and they brought them along. So we want to track that they were there. This year there was 5 little ones, quite noisy, but really entertaining. We didn't have any seniors and we didn't have other community members. So I updated my data. I'm good to go. I click on save. Volunteers, same thing if you had volunteers, if you didn't have volunteers. And then the partners. So here's an example of this like healthy bedtime routine, the different partners and what they could do. Learn was a partner in this because we have the Good Night Bag project, and there were some tools and resources that we were able to send to the school. Wonderful, we'll add that in. There's the value of them. Canadian Parents for French, they donated some books and they also were able to provide some extra materials and some bags. Wonderful, the value there. And then the Maison de la Famille were the ones that actually, they led the workshop. So they talked about the healthy bedtime routines. They talked about their services. They were there. Wonderful. They brought some extra goodies to give away. Put that in. Wonderful. Save that. Save and clear form. So those are just 2 examples. I know I went through the second one rather quickly, but you can do this. And as you go through it, as I mentioned, you will have questions and you will question things, and that's okay. You can fill out what you know and then contact somebody from the PRT. We are happy to kind of go through this process with you again. The next section that's really important, they're all important, is the financial contributions. So this is the place where if you are writing or co-writing or helping someone write a grant that is not tracked elsewhere, you want to be able to track it. So many CDAs are going to be involved in writing grants or collecting donations or gathering funds for different activities. So for example, you know, if I'm writing a grant for Breakfast Clubs of Canada, which I think has changed names since then. But for the purpose of this, we'll call this Breakfast Club. I think it's President's Choice. And the purpose is for healthy snacks. Are you the person applying for it? Is your name the one that's on the grant application? It may be somebody else's and you're helping. That's okay. You can put the different applicants if it's you and anybody else. This is a box. So I would say Catherine and Sin. We work together to write this grant. We're requesting $5,000. I don't know yet how much we're going to receive, if we receive anything. If I receive something, maybe I'll receive $3,000. I'll put it in here later. If I receive nothing, it's the end of the year. I didn't hear back from them. I didn't receive anything. That's okay. This is not a reflection on your grant proposal or grant writing skills. Instead, this is a good place to track all of the different grants that you've applied for. So if the answer is 0, you can put 0. And here, you get to select any associated activities. So I know that this is for the snack fridge. And so when you click on select, you get a list of all the activities you've put in to date. If it isn't associated with an activity or the activity hasn't happened yet, that's okay. You can leave that blank. And then if there's a note that you want to add here. Not yet heard back. So that's just a note for myself to know that I haven't heard back from them yet. And then if I've applied for another one, insert a new row, insert a new row. We haven't yet reached a limit, so you can do this for each of the grants. For the donations, yes, question, we'll pause.
Yeah, sorry, just a quick question. Let's say if I put a grant out there to the teachers and one of them filled them out themselves and we did get the grant.
Mhm.
Do I put that in there as well and put the applicant is the teacher who filled it out, or?
Wonderful question. So if the teacher filled out the grant and the grant has resulted in an activity that has a partner that you're inputting here, yes, you
Okay.
include it.
Okay,
If the teacher applied for the grant and then, if you helped them apply for the grant, you can absolutely include it. If they end up like kind of not doing anything that involves a partner, but it's just like an in-class activity, there hasn't been anything outside of the grant, you may want to include that in the note, but
Okay.
anything that you're involved with in terms of applying for the grant, you can include. So I would say as people start requesting your support and your help for things, the automatic second question is, does this involve a partner? Is this something that would, that I can include in my report? And that helps you kind of like set the boundaries and also prioritize your work.
perfect.
So I love that question. Thank you.
Thank you.
For the donations, mind you, you do not need to track all the donations that come to the school, because for some schools that they have either home and school or the PPO or something like that, that is managing some of those donations or do fundraising. And I'm not saying that you need to do any fundraising. Rather, this section is really in regards to the work that you do and the connections that you make and how they result in donations if they do. So these are all, sections that you use if and when this applies to you. So the example I gave about the fridge, and this comes from an actual, this actually happened in one of the CLC schools a few years back. There was an alumni came to the school and said, you know what, why are these kids eating these snacks that were just they were not like super healthy snacks, they were prepackaged, and so it said, it wouldn't it be great if they had like fresh food every day? And the CDA said, yes, that would be wonderful, but we don't have access to a fridge where we can store some of this. So that kind of like turned into this like free snack fridge. So they said, you know what, I want to give some money to the school. I want to donate some money to be used specifically towards getting a fridge, because we all know those are like big purchases. They're not really easily made. So you can put in donations from anywhere that come into the school for the specific projects you work on. So in this case, I would say alumni. If they want to be identified, you can put in the name. The name of recipient, so where are the funds going? Do they go into the CLC funds, if those exist, if there is an account for that? This is a question you follow up with your principal. Do they just go to the school? Do they go to something to someone specific? Do they go to home and school? Every school and school board is set up differently to receive donations. So check with administration to see where those things go, if you know. So the name of the recipient, in this case, it was just the school. The desired purpose, again, if it's specific, some people just want to donate. And if your school or association or school board gives tax receipts, this is very helpful when people are looking to donate. You can put so this was for the bridge, and they gave, $300. The associated activities here too. So you'll see the little box here, but really you just click on show. It's for the snack fridge. And this auto populates the number. So that's fine. Oh, that was also for the snack fridge. Click on save. Note if needed, but really you don't have to fill out this section that says note. So we've saved everything, and we can click on save form. There's multiple places where you can save things, so feel free to use that button. If you get a notification that says something hasn't been saved, stop whatever you're doing. Do not continue. That's why the save button is one of your best friends. It happens sometimes, particularly when you include des accents, so accent aigu, accent grave, accent circonflexe, any one of those. If you use any characters that are not like straightforward, if you have to use your shift key or your options key or your control key for anything that you're inputting, sometimes technology does not like that, and it could cause problems. So that's a really good tip. I didn't include it in the tip sheet, but maybe I will. Try not to include those if at all possible. And but if you do see something, like you've saved something, you go back, you look at it, you're like, hey, I just spent 5 minutes filling this out. It didn't save. What's happening? This is your next best friend, the report a problem button. You stop everything you're doing. Do not continue, even if there's a deadline, even if you have to get things in, because if there is one problem, it could potentially not save the rest of your information. So when you click on report a problem, please put in your email address and describe the issue as best you can. I'm in this section, this didn't save, or I'm in this section and it keeps giving me an error message. And then you click send, and a member of the Learn IT team will get back to you as soon as possible. If you can also at that point let someone from the PRT know if you're kind of nervous about it's close to the deadline. Otherwise, someone will get back to you, usually with a quick fix, and you'll be able to continue. So the report in 4 minutes or less. So this is where you get to the computer does its magic, and it takes all of this data and puts it out into a form. So we're going to come back to this. As I scroll down, everything I've put in so far will show up here. Please review this. So when I was saying sometimes technology is wonderful in that it can, when it works well. Sometimes glitches happen. So you always want to review all of your information. Does all of this make sense? Number of partners and service providers supporting activity this school year. Are there really 5? You're going to see that further down. So all of these different things, the number of times partners help to develop an activity or program. When you were in your activity and you were putting your partners and you checked off those boxes, things will automatically calculate. So the number of activities that involve volunteers. This is interesting data for yourself too. As you're filling this out, it's nice to see like, oh, this is the distribution of all of the different things I've done. This is how it looks like when somebody who, does not know all of the things that have been done in this school with partners. This is how they can see it. This is the things that we look at as well. It's the things that your school board reps will look at. And all of your data then gets compiled with your school board data. And we look at that, and then we look at all the school board data and all the CLC data together. So it's really interesting in how that kind of like comes together to form a beautiful picture. Okay, so back to your report. So these are the things you can take a look at this Do that for your quarterly reflection. It's really great. Then you can see the financial contribution. So as you see here, the note was just for you when I was showing it to you. This is where your everything will show up here. And every time you update this, your report will reflect that. So the grants, the donations, the grand total, all this information, here is where we see the activities. So this is where, you know, I want to go back and I want to make sure that all my partners, like the number of partners. So I have Canadian Parents for French, that's 1, Learn, that's 2, Maison de la Famille, 3, Maxi, 4, and Électroménager Super Aubaine, which I'm sure exists somewhere in the world, 5. So that makes sense. And so that number, I want to like go back and make sure that it is updated. Total number of activities involving partners. Okay, so it wasn't that one, sorry. It is. Let's go back. Let's go back to the beginning. Goals and partnerships. Here we go. How many individual organizations or service providers are actively working to support activities? 5. Save. Let's go back to that report. Aha. Here we go. 5. That's a good number. That's the first number that we check, just to let you know. Okay. Now, all of the data is good. You have the choice now. This is a new feature. So we only started using this last year because you want to highlight, take this time, you're sending your report. You want to highlight 1 or 2 activities, things that have gone really, really well so far. You can change this each time you submit your report. So we see the priority goals again here. You want to highlight something you're particularly proud of. It could be an activity. It could be something in the financial or donation. It could be something that you are currently developing, something that doesn't show up in this report. And you want to make sure that your principal or principals, if you have multiple schools, that everyone's aware of kind of like what is this like really big, exciting project that either has happened or you're working on. This is your chance to stand out. And you can upload up to 2 images. So if you take photos, and I think schools have their own consent form, so you may already have consent to share them, you can upload up to 2 images, resize them because they can't be like those large photos that you get from your phone, but that should be easily done on computer. If you don't know how, ask somebody who's tech savvy. Otherwise, ask me. I'll tell you how to do it. It's fairly simple. And then, yeah, and then you're good to go. You have a button here. It's really easy. Export to PDF. My PDF came out down here. You see that? The summary report? Yeah, great. So this is where this blank section, obviously I didn't write anything and I didn't upload pictures. This is where your summary and your pictures will show up on this page. Otherwise it stays blank like this. And then the rest of your information that we just looked at shows up on this report. Then, as I said, you put this in an email, you attach it to your email, you send it off to principal or principals, you send it off to the school board rep, and this is all in one email. You just CC all these people, your principal, principals, school board rep, and your PRT rep. We typically get back to you. We actually read each and every one of these and we reply to you. And your school board rep or your principals, depending, may or may not get back to you. Principals have never seen this tool. They will see the report, but they have never seen this tool. So that they're not the people to ask for help on this. You may want to take time to sit with your principal and to actually look through the report and kind of explain a couple of these things. So it's an opportunity to follow up with them. Every time you have this like quarterly monitoring and reporting to do, feel free to take that opportunity. I know sometimes it's difficult to get to grab a hold of the principal or the vice principal, whoever it is that's kind of supporting you and is your co-leader in the CLC approach. But it is an opportunity. So first do that reflection for yourself, then see if you can have that discussion with your principal. If sometimes a school board rep will get back to you if they want to discuss it. oftentimes they just really want to celebrate the wonderful things that have happened. So take the opportunity, as I said in that last section, upload your photo, talk about something that you're really, really excited for. And yeah, and then wait for the accolades and the feedback to come. Okay, questions. I'm happy to stay on for another 5-ish minutes. Otherwise, if anyone needs to go, I know a couple of you had to go early, you can head off and then reach out again next week or in between that. Not a problem. Yes, questions?
Just a quick question. If I'm having the kitchen brigades at our school,
Yes.
so it's an ongoing activity. There's a beginning and then there's going to be an end later on. But in terms of like, you know, the chef is bringing food every week, do I just write what has happened so far? Like,
yes,
in terms of how much money or what he's brought in? And okay, perfect. And anything that I'm planning for the future that I'm saving for another report, I'm really just reporting what has happened, like it's a
to date.
snapshot, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. So you put what's happened to date. You don't need to put the future events. If you want to keep track of that, so there is this handy tool that I think was shared with you all, but it's also on the website. It's the project tracker. And we recently just uploaded a newer version. So it's more simplified, but really you can grab that tracker and either keep it digitally if you can write on, if you have the ability to write on PDFs, otherwise print a couple of copies and just fill out the participants and all that kind of information. It's also really handy because on the backside it has a checklist of things like, did you remember to take a photo of your event? I was so guilty of this. So some of you may not know this, but I used to be a CDA for 3 years in a school. So I'm a prodigious photographer for everything except for when I'm in the midst of an event, and then I completely forget to take photos. So I would carry that checklist around. I'm like, did you take a photo? Catherine, did you take a photo? And usually I take it from like the back of people's heads just to avoid having to deal with, because I want to share the photos with my partners, right? So yeah, there's a checklist there. If anything you want to, you can use that however you want. There's also a space to make your own kind of, if you're a checklist person, there's a space for that. I did mention in the email and also here. So there's a CLC reporting online journal checklist, freshly made for for you all. Some of the things are obviously going to make more sense when you do your second reporting, because it's like go back, review this, review that. But really, it has a pretty straightforward and simple reporting, like just checklists. So I'm going to share it here, and I'll also, don't worry, follow up. Okay, so yeah, little checklist of things that you need to remember. Most of the things that we have already talked about. And this quick tips, does this belong in the CLC report? You will ask yourself this multiple times in the school year. Totally fine. You're not sure, or you want to verify, you can always reach out to one of us at the PRT. Always happy to help. So that's it. I didn't talk about like how to present this to others. If that's something that's of interest to you, feel free to reply when I send the recording out and let me know what else would be helpful. If there's something that you're like, I'd really like to go over this again next session for the Q&A. Also let me know. Happy to accommodate anything that you need. So thank you all. I'm going to stop the recording here, and I'm going to answer a couple of questions that came into the chat. But if you need to go, thank you for being here, and see you next time.